Good evening, I'm Ken Bastida.
And I'm Dana King. We have seen many protests in Oakland, but few like this.
Oakland police fired tear gas into a crowd of hundreds after the protesters ignored police orders to disperse. We saw a few protesters bloodied and injured. Other demonstrators tended to the injured right there in the street. We're not sure what caused those injuries.
Here's what this looked like from the air about an hour ago. Chopper 5 was overhead. Police fired another round of tear gas into the crowd, and then that sent demonstrators scrambling. They ran away from the gas that wafted through the streets. Now, all of this is part of the Occupy Oakland protest movement. These protesters were furious that police raided their encampment at Franco-Gowa Plaza early this morning.
Robert Lyles has been out on the streets of Oakland with protesters all night long. Robert, what's the latest right now?
Well, and I can tell you out live, officers have just fired tear gas rounds into the street. You can hear the explosions, and tear gas is firing over our heads as we speak. They are actually firing much farther than they have just about an hour ago. This now makes the fourth round of tear gas fired by Oakland police in the past 2.5 hours. This is still quite an active scene. It is difficult to breathe here. It is difficult to see. This has been the scene playing out here all day. It started with a line of police in riot gear at 14th and Broadway, declaring Franco-Gowa Plaza an unlawful assembly. But Occupy Oakland demonstrators were told the plaza would be a free speech space until 10 p.m. So both sides faced off.
Must leave now.
And within minutes, the sound of explosions. Tear gas canisters rocketed into the crowd of at least 800.
Protesters were not being violent. They provoked protesters.
They shot tear gas into the crowd, flashbangs. Women, children, grandmothers, grandfathers, they're all standing in the same spot.
And it was like ridiculous. There wasn't no need of doing it. They wasn't doing nothing but talking.
Sending the crowd, including CBS 5 cameras, scrambling and gasping for air. But one tear gas canister appeared to slam into the skull of one demonstrator. His friend carried him away.
I ran up to him and I started shaking his face. He was bleeding out of the mouth and out of the back of the head.
But reigniting Occupy Oakland started peacefully outside Oakland's main library just before rush hour, with a demand to release some 70 demonstrators arrested during the AM raid of Franco-Gowa Plaza.
Their bail should be lowered, if not gotten rid of. They weren't doing anything wrong.
But soon the massive demonstrators were on the move, snaking through the streets of downtown Oakland, snarling traffic, but the entire event was permitted by Oakland police. But at 8th and Washington, the peace was broken. Police fired flashbang grenades and rubber bullets at demonstrators who pushed back, demanding the release of 2 men detained while marching. The confrontation grew so intense, police used clubs to turn the demonstrators back. But demonstrators were not as reserved as they described. Paintballs were either fired or thrown at officers, and a series of small fires erupted behind City Hall. And watch as this protester hurls a large object at this CHP cruiser, smashing the back window.
Personally, I believe that we should have took this action earlier. I believe that we have the duty, the responsibility to protect life and property.
Ladies and gentlemen, I ask that you forgive our voice and perhaps even a shaky camera. The tear gas here has been quite significant, difficult to see, difficult to speak. In a very late night press conference, Oakland police tell us that protesters have thrown knives at them. They say even the kitchen sink as they try moving individuals out of Frank Ogawa Plaza. At this hour, they tell us that there have been 102 total arrests. 2 police officers have been injured. As you can see, this is still quite an active scene, and the demonstrators have run from the tear gas at this moment, but they certainly have not left the streets of downtown. Ken, Dana, back to you.
Robert, I appreciate your efforts here. Keep your crew safe. We know you guys have been taking tear gas while covering the story for us, and we appreciate that. You're giving us live pictures of what's going on right now. You have been covering this story from the very beginning, this Occupy Oakland story. Why is this city having a problem when cities all across America are not? There have been Occupy movements going on all across the United States. Why did it explode in this kind of violence tonight? And we haven't seen this violence anywhere else.
It's a very interesting question. I can tell you that there have been members who are part of the Occupation Oakland demonstrators who have actively pled with the crowd, making calls for peace, trying to keep away the direct confrontation between police and the demonstrators. That has not been successful. On the other hand, it remains to be seen why police have been, in what's an obvious description, quite heavy-handed in their use of flashbang grenades and those tear gas canisters that they have fired. Again, they are saying in this late-night press conference that they face knives, that they face quite hostile activity by the demonstrators early this morning as they tried moving them out of Frank Ogawa Plaza. Perhaps that is their reason for using the tactics that they're using tonight. But Ken, the straight answer is there is really no clear answer as to why violence has escalated so drastically here.
Robert, we're looking at the video. We've seen CHP cars, sheriff's deputies, as well as OPD. Can you give us a perspective on how many protesters there might be out there tonight, as well as how many police?
It's hard to estimate the number of police. I can tell you that there are Oakland police officers here. There are sheriff's officers from San Francisco and Santa Clara County, as well as Alameda. So in totality, I would imagine just here at this intersection alone, we've counted maybe 150 officers. Certainly, there are many more surrounding this perimeter. As far as the number of demonstrators, about 4 hours ago, the numbers were estimated anywhere between 800 and 1,000. Once the rounds of tear gas began to fire, those numbers began to thin out. Initially, it was estimated that 300 assembled here at 14th and Broadway, another 200 assembled at 14th and Franklin. The numbers continue to ebb and flow as we move throughout the evening, and certainly as more and more tear gas is fired into the skies, you see more individuals leaving the area.
Robert, we've seen OPD tactics in the past where they have set up a perimeter around the protesters. Have they been able to do this at this late juncture this evening?
It does not appear that that is happening at this moment. While the protesters were on the move following the initial efforts at the Oakland Main Public Library, police officers were blocking intersections, trying effectively to corral the demonstrators onto certain streets and move their activity where they could better control it. However, the incident at 8th and Washington seemed to change that entire dynamic. Police then started to mobilize, and much of their effort and focus was here on 14th and Broadway.
Now, of course, we're getting excellent pictures from Chopper 5 of what went on just a few minutes ago. Tear gas being fired by Oakland police to try to disperse the crowd. Robert, you know, we've talked about this the last couple of nights, that and you've mentioned it too, there are people actively in the Occupy movement who are trying to keep the peace, who are telling people this is a peaceful assembly, this is our right to assemble, and we don't want to be violent. But tell me, have you seen people in the crowd who are troublemakers? For lack of a better term, professional rabble-rousers who come out and make trouble in these kinds of situations?
Without question, the demonstrators tell us tonight, they describe those individuals as outliers, that they say that those individuals committed to acts of vandalism have nothing to do with Occupy Oakland. They say that they have joined this protest, in fact, just to be vandals. I can tell you, Oakland police continue to say that despite constitutional rights to assembly, they say that 14th and Broadway is an illegal assembly. They started voicing over open microphones that it was an illegal assembly. assembly and then giving minutes before they would fire these canisters into the crowd. This is one of those tear gas canisters that was hurled just above our heads shortly before we went live. This was picked up just seconds ago here on the ground. Now, it remains to be seen if they will continue to fire these canisters through the night or if it seems that they will take a little bit more of a reserved role in dealing with the demonstrators here tonight.
All right, since the tear gas that went off behind you just minutes ago when you started your report, it seems like the crowd has dispersed. Can you give us an idea of maybe what direction they headed?
Dana, it's actually been an ebb and flow throughout the now 4 tear gas rounds. So each time the crowds move either further east or they move north or they move south. They seem to stay away for a distance and then reassemble right back here at 14th and Broadway. That has been the exact dynamic playing out for the past 2 hours, and I'd have to imagine that's going to continue through this night.
All right, Robert Lyles reporting live from downtown Oakland. You and your crew, we appreciate you guys giving us live pictures and really risking your own personal safety to bring this story to the Bay Area. Much appreciated. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Robert.
Absolutely.